This scene from Trajan's column, we see a battle between Roman cavalry and fighting against Sarmatian horse archery and cataphracts with scale armor. So the interesting thing here is that we see one of the Sarmatians using a composite bow and shooting in the Parthian style, also riding from the animation and shooting backward. And they are running away from the Roman cavalry. Obviously, the Roman cavalry is probably Celts that were served under the Roman flag. Yeah, and the thing here is that the column is made after the expedition of the Romans against the Dacians. So there is a questionable here if that the scaled armor we see for the Sarmatians are correct. If the Sarmatian really used this kind of scaled armor, because it don't look like is so effective, this kind of scale, because the whole body is in scale. Even the horse they're sitting on have scale armor. So I'm really wondering here if the armor you see for the horse and the armor we see for the guy on the horse are accurate for the Sarmatians. Obviously, we can see different types of armor for nomadic people on stone carvings and painting and this kind of thing. For example, for with the Xiongnu, we see some kind of type of like laminated and laminated armor, like plate put together and some like quiver armor, like clothing armor made of clothing, and yeah, and this kind of thing. So all of this kind of thing is interesting because we see a kind of a differences if you obviously if you look at armor with the Sassanid. Obviously Sassanid is much later than the Dacian war, and obviously before the Sassanid we have the Parthian that the Roman fight against. But the interesting thing here with the Parthian, Marcus Crassus fight against the Parthian is around 53 BC in Turkey when he fight against the Parthian and lost against the Parthian. But the interesting thing here is that Trajan is after we had long after Julius Caesar and Augustus. Trajan is after that. So obviously the fight with the Parthian is long before even the first emperor of Rome is anointed as the emperor for Rome, as obviously Augustus, the first real emperor of Rome. So that means that the comparison with, obviously I'm not an expert in power drawing of the composite bow and how much powerful was the Parthian composite bow to the Sarmatian composite bow, and obviously the arrow that they shoot from the bow. What was the biggest difference from the metals production in the tip of the arrow, and this kind of thing, because it looks like if you look at Parthian sculpture of the warrior, most of the sculpture we see of a Parthian soldiers are without armor. This much later on we see the cataphracts in full armor depicted on stone walls, for example in like the Sassanid depiction of the cataphracts. And obviously assassinated like Parthian, the Sassanid, then even had some Korean kingdom in Korea have similar to cataphracts. The Byzantines use cataphracts. Cataphract is a a early type of a fully armed soldier on a fully armed horse. That is a cataphract. So it's like a precursor to the knight, like we knight with full shining armor and the horse with full shining armor and this kind of thing. So this battle is after the Battle of Cannae with Marcus Crassus against Sura and the Parthian. So it's very interesting that the depiction of the Parthian armor, it looks a bit different from the Sarmatian armor looks a bit different from the Parthian armor, and so I'm wondering if this more likelier that the Parthians, when they fight Marcus Crassus in 53 BC, that they use more some kind of chainmail armor than and Sarmatian use scale armor. The interesting thing here is that the whole horse is full in armor, like all the way to the hooves. We see they have scale armor, and I don't know. I don't think that is correct. I think something is wrong with this depiction of the Sarmatians. I think something that the Romans depict them more like beasts and like some kind of dragons than human beings. I think there's something that is incorrect with this, how they depict the Sarmatians' scale armor. I think the armor is too what is the word I want to say? It looks like the armor they have on them is their own skin, if that makes any sense. That is what it looks like when we see the Sarmatian armor on Trajan's column. It looks like it's not the armor, they their natural skin. Look, that is what it looks like, because even their hands are scaled. If you look closely, you see here, the hands even are scaled. So they look like the whole body beside the face have scales. So this is what I mean. They don't look like they are armored. It looks like they are naked, but the naked bodies are scaled. Look like dragon scales. So it's very, very strange. And we see here the Romans. The Roman here shooting with also about the composite bow. We see the only one that is fallen is one Sarmatian. No Roman is falling on this. Obviously, Trajan's column is big, show lots of different things on the Trajan column. The battle with the Sarmatian, battle with the Dacians, building walls and building ships and all this kind of thing. So this here is just a very, very, very little picture of all the other depiction on Trajan's column. So I don't know. It's really looks so. I don't know what. Everything is in scale for the Sarmatian. Everything beside their face, everything, and I never heard about that they even have scale gauntlet as protection. I don't know this. Obviously, I'm not any expert in armor from the nomadic people, so I cannot say. But for me, if I looked at this picture, with this guy, the Sarmatians, is that I don't think that the Sarmatians use this kind of scale armor, because even if we look at different shape of scale armor for Egyptians, the Assyrians, the new Assyrian with Ashurbanipal, none of them all of them have something under the scale that makes it so that we see that the scales are armor, not imprint on their skins. This is what this looks like. So, and this, I don't know, it looks very, very strange that they have an even, like everything here on, if you really look at everything is in scale beside the, everything, the protection of over the horse eye is so also. This so obviously what I say here in this video to make more clarification is that I think after the battle between the Dacians and the Sarmatian, when the Roman fight against these two people, they when Trajan come home again to Rome, obviously Trajan lives in Spain. When he come back to Italy, obviously because Italy was the capital of the Roman Empire at that time, before obviously the Roman Empire was split in two, with the Roman in Italy, the Latin, and the Greek Roman Empire, the Byzantine. What I think here is that one of the officers have a war trophy with them, and that was a Sarmatian armor. But because of Sarmatian armor was so rare for the Roman to see, that obviously the centurion or the person that have that booty of the Sarmatian armor, after he killed that person, he take with him that armor. I think the person that do the depiction for the battle scene between the Romans and the Dacians and Sarmatians, what maybe make something want to make their enemy look like more like beasts than human beings, to show how the Romans are the good guys fight against the forces of evil spirits and dragons. And this is what I think what they show here on the Trajan's column. They don't show an accurate battle scene. They show a scene of how the Roman Empire defeat the bad guys, but obviously how the Roman Republic people see that, want to see it. Every time they look at the column, they see their emperor defeating the barbarians, and this is the depiction. Exactly the same how other time in history when they depict, and for example when when the Babylonian king defeat the Israelites, or when the Egyptian defeat other Asiatic people from Asia, or how they depict the Nubians. They always depict them more like lesser than human beings, because they want to show themselves as the heroes and the powerful characters and this kind of thing. And this is what's just what I think is the reason why the depiction of the scale armor on Trajan's column looks so weird, because I don't think they want to show accuracy of the armor. They want to show them more like evil dragons than human beings. So people can really fear the fearsome barbaric nomadic people. Obviously, with all of this is very incorrect, because if you look at art from the nomadic people are amazing. For example, you look at the Scythian, the Xiongnu, the Avars, the Kipchaks, and other types of nomadic people. Their art style are amazing. So obviously the Romans are famous for doing propaganda of other people they fight against. For example, the Celts and the Vandals, the Goths, the Ostrogoths, and the Longobards, and other types of Germanic people. They always try to show their people they fight against, everybody from the Huns, from the Celts, from the Germans, that they are people with long beard, barbaric faces, monsters. Like they always try to show them in very, very, very bad light. And obviously, it's much easier for the Romans to depict people with a more Asiatic facial features, more like barbarians, because of very racial stereotypes. And there is a reason, obviously, and obviously when the Germanic Christians, like the Goths, and the Vandals and the Franks, their depictions of the Huns, obviously they depict the Huns in a very, very negative way, because the Huns looks different, because the Huns come from Central Asia, from Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan, or somewhere in Mongolia. They depict them in a very different way. And it's not, I also have to be honest here, it's not just the Germanic people or the Romans that depict the Huns. Even other nomadic people also have a negative connotation of the Huns, and the Huns have negative connotation of the other people. So obviously the Iranian nomadic people, for example, like the Alans, the Scythians, the Sarmatian, all of them, obviously the Sarmatian, the Alans, and the Roxolanas are a federation of an Iranian nomadic group, but have a different culture aspect than the Iranian people lived in Iran. For example, the Achaemenians, obviously, and even the Parthians fight against other nomadic people. Like all of them looks at, obviously, the first migration of nomadic people were Iranian nomadic people, then the Turkic nomadic people like the Huns, the Avars, the Kipchaks, and then later on we have the Mongolian nomadic people like the Mongols, and other people and so on. So obviously the discrimination of racial discrimination of a culture, because they have a different culture thing or look differently. But obviously because Roman Empire was a very, very big empire, they very much depict all of the substance people that are under them, sometimes as subhuman. And because it's every history we have a empire. For example, in America, the American depict in comic books or in old books, like the Native Americans, like they are evil people. The conquistadors, when it come to Peru, to the Incas, or the Aztecs, they depict the Aztecs as bloodthirsty savagers and this kind of thing. So always the person that conquered other place want to depict their enemies in a negative light to make themselves look gooder and this kind of thing. And everybody did that. The Khmerian against the Champas, in the Cambodian against the Vietnamese, the Han Chinese against the Xiongnu, the Romans against the Celtic people. Everybody did that. Make a negative depiction. So this is the reason. If we come back to the beginning of this video, so this is the reason why I think the depiction of the Sarmatian scale armor are incorrect. I don't think their armor looked like that in the real battle when the Trajan fight against Trajan's army fight against Dacians and Sarmatians. I think their scale armor, obviously they have scale armor, but I think the scale armor will look a bit different. And I think it's more likelier that the Sarmatian armor was a mix between laminated armor and chainmail armor together than just scale like this, because I don't think Sarmatian armor look like. We can try to look at some kind of a Parthian armor. A book I really want to recommend you if you want to look at armor from Iran and weapon from Iran, all the way from the Bronze Age all the way to the Qajar period, from always like 2000 before 2000 BC all the way to 100 108 118 1800, from the Bronze Age to the Qajar period in Iran. It's a really, really good book. They describe of different armor, like this Safavid armor. They talk about the Sassanids. They talk about the Parthians. They talk about the Bronze Age. They talk about the Achaemenians, and they really go in very, very, very good details about the different characters, about different culture, and also they explain. I should not say so much more because I don't want to spoil. It's a really, really, really good book. I really recommend it. And this book, they talks about the Parthian in that book, and give a really interesting, a very interesting description of the Sarmatian of the Parthians and the connection with Parthian weapons, with similarities with other people. For example, the Palmyrians. Obviously, one famous Palmyrian is Shinobia, but that is also after the Trajan War, Trajan's War, and that much later on when the Roman Empire was Christian, and the emperor that fight against Shinobia was a emperor that want to go back to the old guards again, all this kind of thing. It's a very, very interesting book, and this book really, really gives you a good detail about how the people from Iran from that time, how their armor was, and why the armor was in that way, and why was the similarity and why was the differences, for example, between Parthian and the Sassanians from each other. What was so? And obviously how the culture aspect of Iranian after they converted to Islam from the Arabian culture to Islam, what was the biggest differences, and all of this kind of thing in this book. So it's super nice to see how their swords and their weapons and their armor look like from different time periods in Iran. For most of the time, books we read about arms and armor is about the medieval time in Europe, like the French, Germany, and all of this kind of thing. What is I think this is the only book, Arms and Armor of Iran, that they have so much detail from the Bronze Age in Iran and all the way to the 1800 of Iran with the Qajar period. And in this book, obviously, you can see some nice depiction of sculpture and this kind of thing of the Parthians. That I think is obviously more likely that is the type of the Sarmatian too. The Sarmatian will have more similar type of armor to the Parthians, because I think the Parthians and the Alans and the Sarmatians belong to the same federation. They sometimes same group. At most of the influence of the Sarmatians and the Parthians are similar in some way, and also different in other ways. And obviously this is everything I really want to say about the the Trajan war against the Dacian and Sarmatian. Um, yeah, and always the other thing, the quick thing here is that the only depiction beside the Romans and the Sarmatians with that have armor, we never see any depiction on the Trajan column with the Dacian having armor, and absolutely the Dacians use armor. For example, obviously the Dacians have connection with the Celts, like good connection and enemy connection that obviously fight each other, but obviously probably like I think mostly like for many people that like Celts, the Dacians, the Sarmatians, and other groups, mostly likely is what armor type they have if they have money and they belong to an elite group of that faction, probably use some types of chainmail armor that the Celts are very famous for. I think it's more likelier that the Sarmatians use chainmail armor. Maybe they have something, obviously because they are a archer culture, they using the composite bow, and obviously the composite bow is very capable to go through chainmail armor, so probably they have something to stop the arrow going all the way through the chainmail all the way to the body. I cannot say what, but so maybe they have some connection mixture with chainmail armor and laminated armor. That is, I think, is more likelier than just like this with the full body in put in scale armor. Yeah, this is everything we want to say. Okay, bye.